Welcome to the 700 Club Canada. I'm Brian Warren.
And I'm Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson. Thanks so much for spending this time with us.
One of the unique things about the 700 Club Canada is that we get an opportunity to share stories that impact people all throughout Canada.
Yeah, we sure do. And today we have two very special stories that prove that God can make beauty out of our brokenness.
I'm looking forward to that. And later today, we have a special interview with Schutten of ARPA. This is an organization committed to educating and equipping Christians on how to take action on political issues using biblical values.
Andre has also been a guest on In Focus previously, and you can find that interview by going to our website at 700club.ca.
Now, today he'll share about his personal faith journey and discuss his role at ARPA. So stay tuned and you'll enjoy this interview later in the show.
In our first story, rape survivor Lori Singer Harper learned that instead of giving in to depression, she could depend on God for strength and joy.
Take a look.
Stunt double Lori Singer Harper has performed hundreds of dangerous crashes, falls, and spills in her career. She has to have courage, strength, and self-confidence, things she had plenty of as a teenager growing up in North Carolina.
I found my joy in the gym, in gymnastics. It was so much fun learning new skills. I felt so much joy when I was in the air flipping. I felt confident.
That all changed when Lori was 15. She was at a party when a boy she knew asked her upstairs to talk. Instead, he trapped her in a room, put a pillow over her head, and raped her. No one could hear her scream.
And I remember laying there on that bed thinking, why? Why has this just happened to me? Why? Why me? These are the things that don't happen to people like me. But I hated myself for walking into a room not knowing what was going to happen to me. I hated the fact that I was in a position that I was helpless.
Lori felt too ashamed to tell anyone.
I just remember being so sad about it, and so depressed about it that I didn't know what to do about it, but I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it.
With a growing sense of shame and self-hatred, Lori isolated herself from family and friends, falling deeper into depression.
Depression, to me, felt like, why wake up when you could just be dead? It felt like, why get out of this bed when you're happier when you're asleep? The joy comes out, and there was just no hope.
Then she started cutting herself.
I would look in the mirror, and I would take thumbtacks, and I would scratch on my cheek until it bled. And then I would stop. I couldn't really understand why I was doing it. I guess I hated myself so much that if I wasn't gonna die, I was gonna suffer.
A few months after the attack, Lori confided in her best friend, but that trust was quickly broken.
And next thing you know, people online started messaging me about the rape. And that put me to the very end of my rope. I couldn't believe that my best friend that I trusted would tell somebody.
On impulse, Lori downed a handful of pills she found at home, a decision she questioned right away.
After I took those pills, all of a sudden that boldness of I want to die became, do I want to die? And I went downstairs and I told my mom.
Lori's mom called the Poison Control Center and learned there wasn't any danger, but she knew Lori needed help, so she took her to a psychiatrist, who put her on medication for ADHD and depression.
As opposed to always depressed, I started becoming more even. But just because I went on medication didn't give me joy in my life again. It didn't. I was going along, living life, but I didn't feel good inside. I didn't feel great like I used to. I just still felt on autopilot.
One day at school, Laurie met a college student who invited her to a Christian youth group gathering called Young Life. At once, Laurie noticed there was something different about her.
I was like, this girl, I never seen a joy like that in somebody. I mean, this was more joyous than who I was before the rape. And so I was thinking, that girl has got something special. And whatever it is, I want it.
So Laurie went to the meeting and discovered what her new friend had: faith in Jesus.
When I started to learn about who Jesus is, I started to receive joy in my heart again. No matter what it was that was dark that had happened in my life, He loved me anyway. I said, yes, Lord, come in my life. I'm ready. I'm at the darkest place I've ever been, and I accept you fully. Bring it on. After I accepted Jesus, it felt like the depression went away.
Instead of giving in to depression, she learned to depend on God for strength and joy.
God's presence gives me the confidence to know that He's gonna be there and He's gonna protect me.
And Laurie says it was God who led her to a dream career as a stuntwoman, and also to her husband, Will Harper, who happens to be a stuntman. She's learned that when she seeks God through life's trials, she'll find joy.
Now I am hopeful for the future. I know that He has a plan and purpose for my life. Everything's changed.
Laura-lynn, Laurie said that God has a plan for me. After that horrendous experience,
Yes.
she went from autopilot to actually knowing that God's purpose was for her. You might have gone through something horrendous like that as well and wondering, can you get over it? Yes, you can.
Yes, you
and we'd like to get something into your hands. Depression. It costs you nothing, but this is the first step of opening up your future. 1-855-759-0700.
We encourage you to know that it might look bleak and dark today, but God's got something. He's got a breakthrough.
Yes.
You can trust Him. You can trust Him with the journey. Even when it looks like it's so bad, God's got a new day coming.
We believe for you. Coming up, one couple discovers true love after years of pain.
I was done. The words hurt enough. Didn't want to be around anymore. Didn't want to hurt anymore. I was not good enough just to be his.
You would have never known I was dying inside. That was like, I'm the filthiest thing you've ever seen. And I thought, you're on your own, Heather.
My dad had a business in town and we needed to look apart. This happy-go-lucky family, church on Sundays. But in all reality, I lived with a lot of fear. He wasn't like lurking around the corner like a big monster, but it felt like that. My dad would write nasty notes and leave them all over the place, and would go to church and profess this love for God and Jesus. I just came to accept the fact that I was what my dad said I was. It was like, okay, Dad, how'd I do? You did all right. But if you would have done this, 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 and this, it would have been so much better. I couldn't deal with all the pain that I had of just wanting my dad to love me. I just wanted that relationship. Not because of anything that I did, but because I was just his son. If my own father wouldn't love me, couldn't love me, maybe didn't know how to love me, how could anybody else?
My dad never wanted children. My mom was very broken. I was very worried about keeping them happy. How can I make this be okay? I can remember laying beside my dad and him touching me, and It hurt. I remember almost gasping, like, and then I just went away. I was filthy. And I felt so, like, heavy. It wasn't that I wanted to hurt. That's the only relationship I had with my dad. The lady was talking about who Jesus was, that he was willing to trade us all of his good stuff for all of our bad stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally want to do that. If he's willing to do that, I want to do that. And I just remember bowing my head and just going, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I felt this over me, all the way out my fingers and down my legs. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm floating. I've never felt like this before. I felt light. I was a little bit nervous to tell my mom, but I was like, this is really good. Maybe she doesn't know about this. And she said, Heather, you can't do what you have to do to be a Christian. You can never lie again. And she just went on talking, and I just quit listening and thought, wow, okay, well, if I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna try. I didn't know Jesus loved me. I could get a guy to do anything I wanted him to do. If I brushed up against him, if I showed enough cleavage, if I wore a short enough skirt. And I just thought, this is how you do it. You have sex with someone, and then they'll love you.
She said that I had kind of a cute smile, and then ended up having a 2 or 3 hour conversation. We dated for 2 years.
He was different. He's like, I just love you. I'm like, I didn't know how to love anybody. I didn't even know what it looked like. But at that point, I just thought, well, if he's not going anywhere, I might as well do this. She started talking to me about Jesus loving me, and I was like, what do you mean he loves me? I don't even know what that means. So she started explaining to me, and I would be like, well, I've had sex with more than 30 men. And she'd go, doesn't matter, he still loves you. And I'm like, she even bat an eyelash. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is real.
I remember what it looked like with my dad. It was like, I didn't want any part of that. I was so hungry for that male affirmation that I met with these guys as a 21-year-old at 5:30 in the mornings on Wednesdays and 6:30 in the mornings on Sundays, because they would say things to me like, hey, how you doing? You got what it takes, man. You can do this. They weren't impressed by my performance. They weren't impressed by the things that I could do. What impressed them was I was just me. And they loved me just for me. I wanted what they had. And what they had was a relationship with Jesus. And I said, Jesus, I've tried everything else. I need you. I'm gonna give you a shot. Bam, peace. Jesus just loved me for me. It was then that I realized I am his son, and I'm good enough just the way I am.
I'd said to him, where were you when I was being raped? Where were you at? And he showed me. I could see myself, and I looked over, and he was on the floor on his knees with his hands clasped, crying with me. And I was like, okay. So people have been teaching me all these things. I've been reading scripture, how, oh, God created the universe, and he healed all these people, and he did all these amazing things. So why not a little girl in the middle of Iowa? Why couldn't you take care of her? And I started screaming at him. You're a stupid, horrible father. I'm just like railing on him, just, But that moment was where I totally was so real with him that from then on it was like, okay, all right, I can get to know you now. The Lord was so sweet and gentle with me, gently teaching me to trust him, gently teaching us what love even looked like. I always wanted a man to love me. I always wanted to be a mama. He gifted us all of that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have everything I've ever dreamed of.
I wasn't good enough. I was lazy. I was stupid. I wasn't going to amount to anything. And God says, no, you are good enough. Just wait and watch what I'm going to do with you.
You might be sitting there right now and you've had all of those tapes playing in your mind too. But you know what the Word of God says? That God has your name written on the palm of his hand, that you are special to him, that all of those lies and the accusations of the enemy that affect your marriages and your relationships, all of those lies, you can put them away because God calls you holy. He calls you righteous. He calls you a child of the living King of Kings. And that means you're royalty, by the way. That makes you royalty. That's what we love talking about every single day here on the 700 Club Canada. And if you'd consider partnering with us, we'd love to get this DVD into your hands, 1-855-759-0700. I'll tell you something about Pat Robertson. He has spent years and years figuring out what the Bible has to say, what the best answers are, and he has put some of the wisest things into this DVD, and it'll be well worth your time. Consider joining us today. Thank you so much for that. Coming up next, Andre Schutten from the Association for Reformed Political Action in our nation's capital. He is with us in studio. You'll love to hear what he has to say.
Hey, Cindy, how can I prepare for retirement?
Ask anything.
Retirement. What should I be doing?
Ask anything.
Is it wrong to play the lottery?
Ask anything.
Is it a sin to be cremated?
Ask anything. Ask anything.
I am asking you!
Oh, jeez.
No, ask anything. By Pat Robertson.
Oh.
Ask Anything. Available now.
Welcome back. You know, it is a privilege for us at the 700 Club Canada to have friends like Andre Schutten, Director of Law and Policy at the Association for Reformed Political Action. Welcome back. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to be back, Brian. Thanks very much for having me.
You know, I'm so encouraged about every time I get an opportunity to hear what you have been involved in and cases and things that are taking place across the country. But we never get an opportunity to talk and find out, you know, where this incredible gift in this mind came from. And before I ask you that, what are you working on these days?
Well, we're really quite busy. I mean, laws are changing all the time. So our job, our work is involved with Parliament, with the Supreme Court, where there's any case or any new law or bill introduced that's going to affect the Christian community, or where we think, you know, the Bible really has something important to say to this issue or that issue. That's where we get involved, and that's happening all the time. So our challenge is always, what do we say no to, not what do we say yes to. Like it's we have to manage our time because there's just so much work out there. So.
Andre, and I say this with the most humility, and I'm probably going to take one foot out to put one foot in, but, you know, Abe Lincoln was a guy who was really a man of the people, and he was out there. And you have that kind of gift, and, you know, where you're able to make the very profound user-friendly. Where did that start?
Wow. Well, it's definitely something that I have to work on all the time. It's part of the reason that the organization I work for, ARPA Canada, why we exist is to try to take, complex political issues, legal issues, and just make it accessible for the average Canadian. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to go to law school. Not everyone has the luxury to be paid to study new bills or new judgments coming out of the Supreme Court. But God has called me and maybe even gifted me to be able to read those kinds of laws, read those judgments from the court, and then dumb it down, pardon the colloquialism, just make it simple so that the average Christian sitting in the pew on Sunday who's busy with work, busy with family, busy in their communities, that they still know what's going on and what God might be calling them to do when it comes to saying something about the issues that affect all of Canada.
Yeah, you talk about the calling of God, and I know whatever God calls, he cleans. Whatever he cleans, he fills. Whatever he fills, he also pours out and protects and replenishes. When did you answer the call of God, and how did he begin to draw your heart into?
Well, for me, I think it was a lifelong process. So I was born into a Christian family. My dad and mom, 6 siblings. It was an excellent, safe, affirming environment. And I thank God for my parents and the Christian worldview that they instilled in my mind, and a heart to see the sovereignty of God in all things. Jesus is King, and we have to be willing to submit to him and then live for him. And that started at a young age, and throughout my younger years, especially in elementary school, high school, my parents worked really, really hard to send us to Christian schools. Okay. That didn't come easy. That took a lot of hard work on their part to be able to afford something like that. But that too helped to form my mind to think Christianly about all issues, not just Bible issues, but every issue, geography, history, science, all of these things. There's a Christian way of analyzing those things. So that started already back then. Yeah. But then when I went to post-secondary, I was exploring perhaps going into ministry or something else. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she really encouraged me to apply to law school. I didn't really feel a strong calling that way, but I said, well, God calls me to do something. I don't sit around and wait for him to reveal something to me. I'm gonna act, I'm gonna apply. Let's see if God opens that door. And he did. The university I wanted to go to was the University of Ottawa. I got accepted to law school there, moved up there. And then I thought, maybe I'm called to do a particular type of law. I wanted to be a Crown prosecutor. Maybe I watched a little bit of too much of Law and Order or something, I'm not sure. But I really wanted to do that kind of law, right? Be in the courts all the time. But God had a different plan for me. He very obviously and somewhat abruptly closed that door on me and opened up this whole thing that I'm doing now for the last 6 years, which is working with the Christian community, for the Christian community, to bring a biblical perspective to our governments.
It's interesting that you say to the Christian community in a biblical worldview, because we're dealing with a lot of very complex issues right now in Canada, the likes of which have never been dealt with before. When you talk about euthanasia, when you talk about some of the areas between church and state, and how we connect together. You're speaking on a tour right now, and you're sharing about some of these things. Tell us about that.
Well, the topic that we really are focusing on this fall is the sovereignty of God. Who is sovereign? And when we have a biblical view of that, we understand that there's different spheres within society that God has instituted. And we look to Scripture and we can see that. So there's the sphere of state or government. It's very clear from passages like Romans 13, 1 Peter 2, Psalm 72, Isaiah 1, and many others, where God gives a particular calling to the government. And that is protect the innocent, punish the wrongdoer, uphold justice and righteousness.
Right.
Very clear direction there. But there's also 2 other spheres, big spheres of society. One is the church, one is the state. Is the family.
Right.
And the family and the church also have clear callings that are distinct from the government. Yes. And so what we're talking about is saying, if Christ is sovereign over all 3 of those spheres, then the state has to stop pretending that it is sovereign over all spheres, including the church and state.
Because both cannot be sovereign.
That's right. Only Christ can be sovereign. The state's got its legitimate role, and we respect them. As Christians, we respect the state, but it has to stay within its responsibilities and not interfere with the church or with the family. And that we're seeing that trend happen.
With everything that's going on, are you encouraged where we're headed?
Some Christians I talk to are really They seem to be in despair about the trajectory of our society, but I am very encouraged. I'm encouraged when I see all kinds of Christians across this country, and it doesn't matter what their perceived abilities are. Everyday Christians who work as stay-at-home moms, or they work as mechanics, or they work as farmers, or whatever. They're engaged, they care, they love, and they're able to communicate winsomely and compassionately, and I'm seeing them make all kinds of changes in ways that never going to make headlines in the Globe and Mail or the National Post, but they're making a positive difference. And I'm pretty excited about what God has in store for Canada in the next decade or two.
I am too. You're a father of a very young toddler, and also in your spare time, what do you do? What do you do to just unwind and
Okay, well, I love reading, but I don't have a ton of time for that. So I'm a pretty avid reader. I love spending time with my wife and son hiking and the outdoors. I'm also I'm a corporal in the Canadian Armed Forces Army Reserve in the infantry. So that's also a way to just I don't know, spend time in a completely different way than what I do at the office every day. So that's,
you ever spend
exciting.
time doing any paintball?
Paintball, yeah, I've done that, but the welts, you know, they last a little too long for me. I'm getting old.
One more question before you go. What do you say to the person that's sitting and watching right now, how they can get involved and what they should do? What's practical, something simple?
Well, right now we're building over the next year a 12-step action plan for building a real relationship with your elected representative. And if people want to go to arpacanada.ca/action, they can find out all about that. But basically, in a nutshell, we think it's completely possible and realistic for any Canadian, particularly Christian Canadians, to build a meaningful, positive, affirming relationship with their elected representative wherever they are on the political spectrum, to show that Christians are real Canadians with genuine concerns, and we're actually genuinely nice people. And with those kinds of relationships, we can positively impact Canada for the good.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, and I'm looking forward to every time we get an opportunity to talk about what's happening up to date and on the spot. Thank you.
Thank you very
Andre
much,
Schutten. Hey, we really appreciate you and the time that you take with us as well. And we believe that God has a mandate on your life. That assignment is sovereign. It has been given by God. So make your voice count as well. Until next time, God bless. To contact us, phone 1-855-759-0700. You can email us at cba@700club.ca. You can now like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter or Instagram.